We are sailing into the harbor of Lunenburg, Nova Scotia, where the masted schooners of yesteryear are still in active service, plying their trade principally throughout the British Empire. Lunenburg is the home port for one of the world's best deep-sea fishing fleets, and most of the schooners used in this service were built here, including the famous Blue Nose, undefeated champion of the North Atlantic fishing fleet and winner of 4 international schooner races. The town itself dates back several hundred years, when it was the site of an Indian encampment, and afterwards a French fishery settlement. About the middle of the 18th century, it was settled and named by a large number of families that migrated here from Lunenburg, Germany. We have visited most of the harbors in the world, but nowhere do we remember having seen so many masted schooners assembled together for practical use as here at Lunenburg. The province of Nova Scotia is well situated in the largest of the world's great fishing areas, and it is also favored with an abundant supply of good timber. Consequently, shipbuilding has always been one of its most important industries. The men of Nova Scotia not only build their ships, but they also go down to the sea in them. And by family tradition and experience, they are as daring as they are skillful. Although they specialize in the building of fishing schooners, now and then they turn out pleasure craft that is also a credit to their skill. The numerous waterways of Nova Scotia are ideal for good sailing, especially in the vicinity of Bridgewater, on the Lahave or the Lahave River, which is particularly noted for its ideal yachting conditions. A few miles from here, where the Petite Riviere flows into Green Bay, we are rewarded with a panorama of scenic beauty typical of Nova Scotia. And we are told that we are now looking down upon one of the world's most prolific fishing areas, where tuna weighing 800 pounds and more are not unusual. It is claimed that all world record tuna catches during the past 36 years have been made in the coastal waters of Nova Scotia. For those who prefer light tackle angling, there are numerous inland waterways abounding in a variety of gamey fish, including the ever-sportive Atlantic salmon. In these post-war days, when so many soldiers are returning to civilian life with physical handicaps, it is interesting to note how these handicaps are overcome, as illustrated here by a one-armed fisherman who baits a hook and casts a line as well, if not better, than any of his two-armed contemporaries. In the human scheme of things, there are a few diversions that are universal, and outstanding among these is the sport of fishing, which has encircled the globe since time and fish began, and none but a fisherman can understand or appreciate the thrill of bringing in a fighting fish. Old Isaac Walton, whose superb story of the complete angler has never been excelled, even though it was written 3 centuries ago, has given to the sport of fishing the halo of poetry that eulogizes the men who fish, as well as the settings in which they fish. Usually, when we set up our cameras in the hope of photographing the catching of a fish, nothing happens. But on this occasion, we are rewarded with an actual catch. And here it is, a sparkling silver Atlantic salmon. Over 8,000 salmon were caught in the streams of Nova Scotia last year by visiting anglers, and April, May, and June appear to be the most prolific months. Now let's get around to a little commercial fishing, which is carried on in a unique manner by the boys of Nova Scotia. They are catching a prolific but choice species of fish that finds a ready sale in the markets. And it is not unusual for a boy to scoop up 100 or more of these fish in a few hours during the height of the season. A few miles from here, we visit a peaceful little fishing village known as Blue Rocks, noted for its lobster industry. Nova Scotia claims the world's record for the production of lobsters, no small amount of which are caught in the waters immediately adjacent to these villages. Lobsters caught here have weighed as much as 35 pounds. Unfortunately, the season ended before our arrival, and all that is left for us to see in connection with lobsters are the wooden traps that have been neatly stored for next season. Lobsters usually walk about the bottom of the sea in shallow places, and these traps, baited with food, are used to catch them. The scenic beauty of Nova Scotia and the fascinating subjects found along her shores have made this land a haven for photographers and artists, one of the most unusual and talented of whom is Earl Bailey. A native of Nova Scotia, Mr. Bailey lost the use of feet and hands at the age of 3 years through an attack of infantile paralysis. Through his great courage and optimism, he taught himself to paint, and goes on teaching those who meet him that regardless of how physically incapacitated or handicapped a man may be, there is always a chance to do something interesting and useful if the will to accomplish is of sufficient strength. Not alone for the unusual manner in which his work is executed, but for artistic merit, his paintings in watercolors and oils have always won a great deal of well-deserved admiration and praise and found ready purchasers. But aside from the merit of his paintings, we are inspired by the beauty of his soul, which tends to minimize our unjustified complaints and sends us on our way with a more noble regard for men like Earl Bailey. At Peggy's Cove, another popular resort for artists, the shoreline of the province continues with its unending picturesqueness. But it is time now for us to end our journey, and it is with